Roberts.
Yes. Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for appearing today. It's good to see you again, Mr Taylor. My question is to the Australian Banking Association. We've seen a lot of bank closures, not only in the regional areas, which have really inconvenienced people and changed their lives dramatically, but also in suburban areas and even metropolitan areas. And the banks have been driving those changes, those reductions in service in the regions and in suburban. So do you, Mr Taylor, see a world where someone without a digital ID can live a normal life, accessing a full range of services an everyday Australian would need?
Thank you very much for the question, Senator. I'm trying to understand exactly what point you're trying to get at.
Let me explain. If someone opts not to get a digital ID,
yes,
can they live a full life as an everyday Australian?
Well, part of what this bill sets out is ensuring that people have the right to choose or not choose to use a digital ID. We believe that it's important that someone who chooses not to use a digital ID can still continue to access those services, and that's why using traditional ID, someone would still be able to open and operate a bank account, and we agree that that's very important.
Thank you. As Senator Smith pointed out, this inquiry is about the bill, but the bill covers many topics and the inquiry covers many topics, and so we need to assess practicality as well as consequences. On page 6 of your submission, when an accredited data recipient, meaning a retail store, a bank, etc., makes a request of the system to verify an ID, currently that response is considered a fail, called a non-functioning response, after 1 second. Your submission sounds like you would like that made faster. Is that correct? It's in the box, page 6.
So, Senator, the box that's included in here is observations on the CDR governance structure. So this is in relation to the consumer data right, not the digital ID. It's been included for illustrative purposes around the setting of standards for digital ID. So it's not a specific comment on the bill itself. It's a comment on the way that standards around how digital ID is used and governed and evolves over time will be managed by the Data Standards Board.
Thank you. Well, it still sounds to me like your submission, you would like it made faster than 1 second.
That's not what we've said in our submission, Senator. It's an illustration of how important it is where standards around the use and acceptance of digital ID are set, that they are done with appropriate guidance from a coordinating body that we've suggested in our opening statement to ensure that it's feasible and practical for business and also addresses the needs that consumers have in using a digital ID.
Is faster better for you?
Senator, I think going back to the box that you're referring to in our submission, our commentary actually goes to the way that those particular rules in consumer data right has been set, maybe has not fully considered the practicalities of all the stakeholders, and so we would actually, our observations in that box were going to the need for better consultation, better governance of standard setting.
Thank you. In your planning for digital ID, if the system fails or suffers an outage, what happens? What would your ATMs, banks, customers' ability to spend their money also suffer?
Senator, so digital ID and how customers access their bank accounts are obviously two separate things, and a digital ID would be presented by a consumer when they're opening an account or establishing a banking relationship with a new bank as required by AUSTRAC. So if the system was down, in theory, someone wouldn't be able to access or present that identity document at that time. But it's also important to note that government databases now that verify physical ID are also online and electronic. And so if those services were to go down now, even presenting a current physical ID, it wouldn't be able to be validated by current government databases.
Do you have a final question?
Final question, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
You also want changes to the data retention. Can you explain what change you want made?
Senator, are you referring to your comments about amending legislation that required data retention?
Yes.
Yeah, so that goes to our opening statement about consistency. So where there are legislation requiring businesses or other entities to maintain copies, so photocopies or scanned copies of physical documents, then those requirements would not be consistent with the way that digital ID helps consumers to minimise the amount of personal information they provide. So our recommendations for those existing laws to be amended so that businesses are not required under those laws to keep the photocopies or scanned copies of, say, driver's licences or passports.